Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sports. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio on AM 1270. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. You're tuned in for Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. We hope you've had a great weekend and you're ready to get your week started the right way with Faith and Sport to catch up on all the latest sports headlines here on Carolina Catholic Radio and also Faith. And to get you caught up, I'm Chris, your co-host and producer. And as always, we've got your host here, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hey, folks, welcome to the show. However, that's right. I gotta let the crowd
your loyal fans.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody in our studio audience. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. This is Faith in Sport, where we apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sport. And what we mean by that is if you're a player, an athlete, if you're a coach, an administrator, you're a referee, or a parent of those players, this is the show for you because what we want to do on this show is we want to discuss morality, character, and ethics as they relate to sport. And we all know that there's been too many bad stories in the world of sport, either involving ethics or morality and so forth. And so what we want to do is bring light to that, and that's the purpose of this show. So thank you for joining us today. Here's what we're going to do. We have our hit and miss with Carlos. He's going to join us on air here in a second. Carlos Herrera is a certified coach in the D.C. area. He's going to be calling in, joining us for our hit and miss. We have weekend headlines, and then we have a unique guest today. He's a pro surfer, and his name is Bear Woznick. He's an EWTN radio and TV personality. He's going to be joining us to talk about what he does in the world of surfing, what he does in the world of public speaking, and mainly he speaks on men's issues. So you'll want to join us for that.
Yeah, when I saw he was going to be on the show today and saw what his name was, I was like, he's got to be an awesome guy with the name Bear.
Bear, I know. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to having him on. We'll do the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then we'll end up with, Chris, we have a new category. It's called Commentary of the Week. So I'm going to make a commentary on something. I know.
We've got all kinds of new categories this season.
I know. It's one of the things that we've done is we'd like to change things up.
Yeah.
So, folks, thanks for joining us today. You're listening one way or the other, AM 1270. You're listening on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, or you're listening to us on Listen Live directly from carolinacatholicradio.org. Let's get into our discussion with Carlos Herrera. Carlos, you there? Welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, I'm here and glad to be on the show.
This is fantastic. So, as always, boy, is there a lot of stuff to talk about in the world of sport or what?
Sure is.
So
excited
you
to get into it.
Yeah, let's go. You go first, as always. Is it a hit or a miss for you?
So this is a hit, and, there's a lot of, I think, drama around this particular issue, but in Connecticut, we were talking in the last show about this transgendered athletes competing, particularly transgendered males competing in the women's high school athletics, particularly track and field, and we had mentioned it. This week, a couple things happened, and I'll say that one of the women, the teenagers, high school track stars, beat for the first time her transgendered
opponent,
adversary.
Yep.
Yeah, in the 55-meter dash. And it was the first time that she's ever won and beaten either one. There's two transgender athletes in Connecticut, and she has usually come in third place to both of them. I don't know if both ran in this particular event, but it was Friday when the event took place, and the girl ended up winning. So it was a really big feat, and this kind of goes on to the greater picture of that 3 days prior, on Wednesday, they had announced another lawsuit that three of the female girl teenage athletes with their parents had sued the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Association that they are being discriminated against by having to compete with who they consider males.
Right.
So they had it launched, I don't know if this is the second one, but on Wednesday it was announced, and on Friday the girl won her event. And so I think all of this is going to continue to sort of steamroll in a direction, but it was great to have the female teen athlete win this event.
No, I love that as a hit. Let me give this some context. When we first went on the air, Carolina Catholic Radio went on the air about a year ago, and I remember before our show actually started in the summer, our president and chairman, David Papandrea, asked me to do some, I guess you would call them like public service announcements of sort. And that actually wouldn't be the name, but it was a way to draw people into the show that was going to start in the next few weeks. And one of the issues that I brought up was this very thing, that last year, the gals that came in third, fourth, and fifth would normally have finished first, second, and third if the state of Connecticut didn't allow these transgendered then boys that switched over to girls to run. And in the 55-meter state finals, two guys came in first place. And the reason that this is so problematic is that the state of Connecticut, along with a lot of other states, does not do what the NCAA does. Now, I'm not saying that what the NCAA does is fair. In fact, you and I were talking off air, Carlos. We're going to bring this back, and we're going to devote virtually an entire show to this whole issue. And last year, the two gals that won were guys, I think, just a few months before, maybe even a year at most. But the difference is between the state of Connecticut and other states and high schools, I should say, in these states, and the NCAA, which is college, is this. To compete in the NCAA as a woman, if they were a guy the year before, for 1 full year, they have to be under what is called hormonal therapy. However, that is still an issue, as we'll talk about, because lungs can't be affected, blood volume can't be affected by hormones and so forth. It can affect muscle size and muscle strength. But again, we'll reserve that for another program. The state of Connecticut has no such issues. I think I was reading it to you off air, Carlos, and it said something along the lines of, as long as they're consistent, and this is what they kind of always identify as, they're allowed to compete. And boy, does that have a lot of problems.
Yeah, it really, look, I think on both sides of this coin, any way you look at it, and I'm looking forward to spending more time, on this particular topic, but really what it boils down to is fairness, right? So we're looking at fairness, and I think both parties are looking at fairness. What's fair? Well, if you're a transgender male and you want to compete and you identify as a female, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, you want to do that? I think most people would say, well, be who you want to be. Now, you take that into, well, I'd like to compete in my, I don't want to compete against men because I identify as a woman.
Sure.
I want to compete with women. Well, you'd have to ignore the physical aspects of being a male, which hormones, as you said, they might do some of it, part of it, but it's not entirely, you cannot discount the fact that they're males. So now, that might seem fair to that transgender athlete to be able to compete with women because they identify as a woman. But what does that do to the women, the girls who are competing against what is now a biological male? That's not fair.
That's right.
They've won 17. Those two transgender athletes have won 17 of the titles since 2007, 2019. So that's 2 years, and you and I were talking, that's probably 4 or 5 each year of titles that the ones who are biologically female teens have not been able to win at, because these two, transgender male or female, however you want to refer it, have been winning almost exclusively all those events until Friday, when the biological female teen won her event. First time in 2 years.
Yeah, I know.
And that's not fair.
No, agreed. And I'm going to take this a step further, Carlos, and mention the words justice versus fairness. Fair is an okay word to use here, but the unfortunate thing is that it's used far too often, and the ultimate issue here is that it's an arbitrary set of rules that describes or defines what is fair. What we're looking more for is justice, which is grounded in nature, which is grounded in natural law and in God's law. And this is a perfect example of that. This is clearly unjust. If they are boys and they want to change genders, what they do as you said, most people would agree, even if they're conservative and traditionalists and so forth, but when it comes to competing in sports and events against our daughters and our sisters and other women that were born biologically female, it is an injustice. And this lawsuit, in my mind, I'm not for all this litigious society we live in. I'm not for a lot of these lawsuits that occur. Sometimes they're frivolous. Sometimes they're just rampant, and they seem to be an exceedingly amount to even keep up to any regard. But the bottom line is this one seems to be justified.
I would absolutely agree, and look forward to getting into it in fuller discussion. The implications of Title IX. How this actually goes against Title IX.
Yep.
So it's almost like we're going full circle, and should be interesting discussion to see what happens and plays out over the next several months.
Absolutely. Folks, we're talking to Carlos Herrera. He's a certified soccer coach up in the D.C. area, and he joins us just about every week to talk about our hit and miss. You're listening to Faith in Sport, where we apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sport. Thank you for joining us here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. So Carlos gave his hit, which was the fact that a biological female actually beat a transgendered female, if that's the correct term. And this can be kind of confusing to even listen to, and it's certainly confusing for Carlos and I to speak about. And even though him and I talk about this regularly off the air and we read about it, just when you're trying to convey it over the airwaves, sometimes it can get kind of confusing in our own minds. And so if you're a little confused as you're listening, we don't blame it by any means. I want to skip along to my miss, and this is my miss of the week, and it has to do with the Houston Astros cheating scandal. And we talked, I think it was your miss a couple weeks ago. We certainly broke it while you and I were having a talk about a month or so ago. And this has been not only the biggest story in the last month. Carlos, is it fair to say overall that this scandal is the biggest story in the last year in sport? Would you agree with that?
I would say it gets pretty close. I mean, if you're a baseball fan, it's the biggest story in probably baseball history, I would think.
Huge.
Probably second to, or maybe even first to, the betting scandals that from Pete Rose when he was betting on games, right? Like
right.
This
in the 90s.
is again, I have to go with the word fairness, but what has happened here, there's a tremendous element of fairness, and how do you rectify it, or how do you deal with it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I don't want to take any time away or dedication away to the tragic death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and those other people that died in that helicopter crash. And I think that will be the story of the year, no doubt. But in the last year prior to that helicopter crash, I would say this is the biggest story to come along in sport. And it certainly garnered a lot of attention from radio personalities and TV personalities that talk about sports on a regular basis. But the interesting thing, I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle. My miss is not that what the Houston Astros did. That's already been talked about. I think that was your miss a couple weeks ago. My miss is with sports radio and TV, and both ESPN and CBS Sports Radio and so forth, and all the time and effort that they've dedicated to this scandal in the past month. Now, in and of itself, I think it's deserving. As I mentioned, I think it's the biggest story that's happened in the last year. It's certainly the biggest thing that's happened in baseball since the steroid scandal in the 2000s, and then the decade before that, the Pete Rose betting scandal. No question about it that it's big. But where my frustration comes in, and the reason that I'm making the miss on these sports radio and TV personalities and networks' decisions to talk about this, is not that they're talking about it. It's just that the time that they spend talking about this issue compared to the actual ongoings of the field. In other words, the game is on for 6 months. It's on from mid-spring until late fall. And I've listened, for the most part, in my commute, to sports radio, to and from work. I listen to it when I go out at night, say, to pick up something from the grocery store, picking up a kid from softball practice. I would say at least 50% of the time. So I'm a good gauge as any to kind of share or evaluate what their content is about. And so many times, even in July or June, as we said off air, There will be major games going on. There will be major contests going on. Sometimes even in the fall. And of course, it's the worst time for the playoffs, for the baseball to be going on because football season has begun. But the example is in June and July when baseball's in full swing. There's all these great games. There's all these great series going on. People are vying for first place early on in the summer. And they will talk about an upcoming, these TV and radio sports people will talk about an upcoming exhibition preseason game in football in 3 weeks. And it baffles me, it confuses me, and it frustrates me, and this is why it's a miss. It's almost, this is a form of the National Enquirer, Carlos, that they love the sensationalism. The only reason that they get on the coattails of Major League Baseball is because there's something scandalous, there's something worth talking about off the field because it's negative. And I will say this, and there's a certain degree that football people, in their hearts, there's almost like no room to like another sport. And I do believe to a certain extent, it's a way to keeping football number one and baseball number two. In other words, don't talk about the game, but when something bad happens in the game, let's talk about that. How's that come off to you as I say that?
To me, it makes sense, and I think, it is rightly, as you kind of described it, sort of a tabloid news, but I think what's happening is this kind of broke during the summer, right? And it really started to get momentum. There's been talk about sort of what happened, but the interesting part, and I think it stems along with, in terms of news, the training camp started for baseball. Right. And the irony of it, if you can imagine this, is the Nationals, the Washington Nationals, are in the same facility and field as the Houston Astros. So you have this year's winners against the second place team who could have been cheating when the Nationals played, yep, and certainly were cheating in 2017. And I think what's happening is now players are all starting to comment. They've had the news as to what the penalties are. They've fired, I think, 3 people, 2 coaches and 1 general manager.
Right.
But now their opinions are starting to come out. So it's almost like a water cooler conversation that is happening in the tabloids. What do you think of what happened? Were you on the team? What should you do? Do they really deserve to have the championship in 2017? So I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think newsstands are going to take advantage of it.
No, there's no doubt about it. It's a great story, no matter what you think. Even people that aren't interested in baseball, this will get their attention because it's something different. Let me ask you this, Carlos. Do you think the fact that the general manager got fired, the coach A.J. Hinch got fired, he was the one who led them to the World Series in 2017, led them back to the World Series this year, in which they lost against your Washington Nationals. There was a $5 million fine. 2 of the other, one was a bench coach, Alex Cora. He was a bench coach in 2017 for the Astros. He's with the Red Sox. He got fired this past offseason. And Carlos Beltran, who was in his last year of playing, was fired just a few weeks after he took the job as the manager for the New York Mets. Now, all this being said, and the fact that the fines, considering these firings and so forth, and the apologies came directly from the players. Did you see all the apologies? Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, the owner, Justin Verlander. Some people put it in social media. Other people were literally in front of a microphone at this press conference that the Houston Astros held. Is and was the penalty fair? Now, before you answer the question, some people are calling for a similar penalty on the Astros as Manchester United has, the soccer team, the great historic soccer team in Great Britain, in which for overstating their revenue was the quote. In other words, they said they were making more, and I think that affects a lot of things, everything from tax revenue and for the value of the team and so forth from 2012 to 2016. They were fined 30 million euros, and the biggest thing is, Carlos, as we talked off air, that they're out of the Champions League for the next 2 years. People are saying the similar penalty should have been given to the Astros. What's your instinct? The penalty was good, or slam them more?
All right, so let's take a look at it from a level of competition, right? If Manchester United was overstating their finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an economic sort of cheating, if you will, about the value. It's more valuation. If you were to tell me they were cheating on the field of play, which is what happened, and surely must have benefited the Astros, at least that was their intent of the cheating, is to have a benefit over the opposing team. I think that's more of a violation of fairness of play, what the Astros did, than what Manchester United did. And let's compare, how many years ago was that? 30 million euros?
Yeah.
Right? You said $5 million was to fine the Astros? Yeah. Well, 30 million euros is probably $40 to $50 million.
That's right. That's right.
You get a $5 million fine, that's a slap in the hand.
I agree.
I think the apology that the owner issued for the Houston Astros, and a lot of people have commented, it's really not sufficient to account for the impact and the stain on the game. I think this is far worse what the Houston Astros have done in terms of credibility.
And therefore the penalty is minor, especially in comparison with Manchester United. Part of me goes that way. There was something interesting that Rob Manfred said, the commissioner, and he gave an interview again yesterday. It was actually an interview to, I think, ESPN, and I think it was nationally aired. And he said a couple things in that interview, but one of these things he said outside of this interview was, he didn't say it quite like this, but it was clear that it was clear from his statement that he wasn't going to punish the players anymore because he went to the players. Major League Baseball went to the players, and they asked the players to be forthright and to give their stories without any penalty. And his fear was that if he did not offer that to them, that he would not have gotten to the bottom of this. And of course, the big thing is this, Carlos, and in fairness to the situation, right? In fairness, his thing is, let's find out exactly what happened. Let's find out exactly how they did it, when they did it, who did they do it with, to keep it from being repeated in the future. Isn't that fair?
I think it's certainly a step, and it's certainly you bought their willingness to talk about it. And, again, you have to kind of wonder whether you're going to get the full truth. I mean, who's really going to say that? So I think that's part of the story, but I think the penalty should be severe, if not to the players, to the team itself. To the
team. That makes sense. I agree that the players, although they're the ones who orchestrated the whole thing, and I think, and I'm going to end this whole show with a commentary on their contrition. And by the way, a lot of people said that it wasn't a true contrition. But I saw I went to YouTube and I watched the owner and I watched Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman give their apologies, and I do feel that it was sincere. You don't know it's in anybody's heart for sure, but I'm going to comment on that at the end of the show. But I've ping-ponged back and forth. I was talking to my good buddy Bill today. He's a big baseball fan, he's a traditionalist like I am, and he said, let's move on. Let's move on from this. They've learned what they had to learn. There's been a slap on the wrist. Is it a big slap? Is it going to keep it from happening again? My guess is it will. And for this reason alone, Carlos, I remember my friend said to me a couple years ago, should they keep, if Barry Bonds gets in the Hall of Fame, should they keep him out, or should they put an asterisk by his name in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, you know what? It doesn't matter whether there's an asterisk there or not, because, Carlos, I believe that his name is forever tainted. In other words, they can take the 2017 World Series games away from them, that championship away from them. They could take away the championship that they won to play for the Astros. But the fact is everybody knows now. I mean, seriously, 5 years from now, Carlos, especially since this wasn't just a 1 week thing. This wasn't a couple day thing. We're going on our fifth week of talking about this, and this is not going to die anytime soon. In fact, the start of the baseball season cannot start quick enough for them because they want this to be in the background. Don't you believe that when anybody in the next couple years, maybe in the next couple dozen years, when they look at 2017 World Series winner Houston Astros, everybody like you and me, and certainly any other big baseball fan, is going to see it and go, yeah, but. Is that fair?
disagree with you from the point of...
That was a pretty good diatribe, though, you have to
It
admit.
was. Human beings have a tendency to forget, right? Like, we forget.
Yeah,
I'd
we
rather
do.
put an asterisk on there, and
We
so
do.
20 years from now, people go, why is that asterisk there? And then there'll be a little note. Oh, yes, he used steroids. Or, oh, yeah, they cheated.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that in posterity so people remember.
Got it. And you really like what is happening to Manchester United, because I remember off air you said, wow, that's a big one, them being out of the Champions League.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's everything to them, isn't it? It's not only notoriety and gaining fans, but they make probably a ton of money for that.
There's a financial reward for that, absolutely,
Yeah,
for being a
big
part
time.
of it and winning it if they can.
Big time. Well, folks,
Thanks for being on the show again, for having me on the show, John.
You got it,
Pleasure
buddy, as always. Yeah, we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Thanks, take care.
All right, that was Carlos Herrera. He is a certified soccer coach up in the Washington, D.C. area. He joins us just about each and every week to talk about our hit and miss. And as you heard, we were just talking about the ongoing saga of the Houston Astros, in which they cheated, stealing signs to help their batters. So here's what we're going to do,
We
Chris.
call it as the diamond turns.
That's right. It's the time it turns. So let's do this, Chris. Let's go to our weekend headlines.
Okay.
And after that...
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's time for Weekend Headlines with Dr. A on Faith and Sport.
Here we go, folks. Major League Baseball, the aforementioned Major League Baseball pitchers and catchers have reported for all teams with games starting in just the next couple of weeks. Of course, most of the talk is of the Astros cheating scandal. Let's hope that we're on the downside of that and the game is the focus once again.
What? I haven't heard about that. What?
NCAA basketball, the top 5 teams. This is the first time it's changed in several weeks. It's Baylor at number 1, Gonzaga 2, Kansas 3, San Diego State, who is still undefeated at 26-0, is number 4, and then Dayton slipped into the top 5 spot. And Chris, as you know, in fact, most Carolinians know, big game this week is number 6, Duke is at NC State. Your prediction right here and now is?
I sure hope the Wolfpack can come and win that game, but if they play like they did last night...
When they lost to Boston College.
Got me kind of worried.
Yeah, I think you should be worried. But one good thing they have going for them, this is a rivalry game, and they're at home. So we'll see. We'll see how strong Duke looks. In the PGA, folks, yesterday, Australian Adam Scott won the Genesis Open, taking home $1.6 million. Not bad for one weekend's work. Actually, it's a long weekend, Thursday through Sunday. Mm-hmm. But that guy's skill, he certainly earned it.
Yeah.
Mexican Championship is up next week. In the NBA, it was All-Star Weekend. Of course, it was highlighted by the actual All-Star game. Mm-hmm. Do you know who the 2 team captains were for this, Chris? Did you know how it works?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay, there was, there used to be like the NBA East against the NBA West, and voters would. Mm-hmm. But now, what they've been doing the last couple of years is actually pretty cool. It was Team Giannis against Team LeBron, and what they do is they're the captains of each of these teams, and then they select like it's playground ball. So they can select from either division. They can select from their own team, teams that they never play or play very, very rarely, and they compete against each other. And, of course, it's just a layup competition because the final score was 157, 155, and Team Giannis won. And my guess is by Wednesday of this week, nobody will know who won that game. In fact, right now, everybody's going, I watched that game, Acquaviva, and thank you for telling me who won. Because it's a layup competition. Everybody's dunking and layup. I mean, nobody's playing defense. 157 to 155? I mean, come on. And then NASCAR, you know what happened to the Daytona 500 yesterday?
Yes, it got rained out.
It got rained out.
Yep.
What's the starting time today?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock today.
Yep,
so
4 o'clock this afternoon.
So here's what will be interesting is, what is the difference? This is a great question. Like, what would have the TV viewership been yesterday compared to today? But the fact is, it's decent, and this is one of the reasons that it's good that it's on President's Day, is a lot of people are off.
Yep.
Do the most people like your fiancé and so forth, are they off work today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of people off, and a lot of people that might have to work will actually be home in time to be able to see the race, being it's going to be on in the evening instead of earlier like it usually is.
Yeah. So will you watch this NASCAR race, the Daytona 500?
This will probably be maybe Jimmy Johnson, my man Jimmy Johnson's last Daytona 500, because he announced this past year that this will be his final season as a full-time driver, so we'll see what happens this season. I hope he can get a one more Daytona 500 win.
That's neat. Yeah, okay, so you have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to go to break, but here's what I want you to do over the break is listen to our public service announcements and other advertisements. Probably one of them is going to be the great Dr. John Acquaviva, right? But also, I want you to check out the website of our guest who's coming up right after the break. His name is Bear Woznick, and go to deepadventuresministries.com. Let me say that again, deepadventureministries.com. And so you can see a picture of this guy, but you can also see what he does. He's one of the faithful guys in the world of sport. We're going to talk to him about him being a professional surfer. We're going to talk about his discussions that he has with men and men's issues. And we'll talk about some other stuff with Bear Woznick. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. This is Faith in Sport. Thank you for listening to Carolina Catholic Radio today. Let me hand it over to Chris, and stay tuned for more Faith in Sport after the message.
That's right. And if you happen to miss any of Faith in Sport, you've got plenty of opportunities throughout the week to catch an encore presentation of Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, like Monday nights from 10 to 11. You can hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport Tuesday nights from 8 to 9, Wednesdays from 11 until 12. Thursdays from 10 p.m. until 11, and Friday nights from 11 p.m. until 12 a.m. And on the weekends, on Saturday afternoons, you can hear Faith in Sport from 4 to 5, and Sunday afternoons from 2 to 3. So you've got plenty of opportunities to catch up on your Faith in Sport, and you don't have an excuse to miss Faith in Sport because you've got plenty of opportunities to catch Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. And as always, you can hear Faith in Sport live every Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 with myself, Chris, and your host, Dr. John Acquaviva. And we've got more Faith in Sport live coming up right after this break.
Gentlemen, this is Jason Murphy once again for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. As iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. We are now just 3 short weeks away from the 10th annual conference on March 7th at St. Matthew's Catholic Church. Our theme this year is, what are you looking at? What is pulling you away from your duties as a Catholic man? Work, social media, pornography, the phone or need for connection, yourself? What is keeping you from looking to Christ as St. John the Baptist did, without all of the distractions and occasions of sin that the world, the flesh, and the devil have laid in your path? Join us to get to the sacred heart of the matter and put away your old self and put on Christ and be the man, the father, and husband you have been called to be. Go online right now and register at CatholicMenOfTheCarolinas.org. For the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, this has been Jason Murphy.
Hi, I'm Rick Rotundi, founder of Cenacle TV. My new series, Messiah, takes viewers on an epic journey from ancient Egypt to the Mount of Sacrifice to the fall of Rome. Hosted by Leonardo de Philippis, featuring 5 amazingly insightful experts and filmed at nearly 30 locations, Messiah is an experience you won't soon forget. And this year, when the Church invites us to engage the Bible more deeply, put Messiah on your viewing list. Pick up the Messiah DVD at your favorite reseller, or ask for my book, Messiah, Discover the One the Prophets Foretold. You can learn more about Messiah and watch the first episode free at See Messiah, that's SEE Messiah.com. I'm Rick Rotundi with Cenacle TV, here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Hi, folks. Dr. John Acquaviva here, host of one of the local shows on Carolina Catholic Radio called Faith in Sport. I invite you to check out my new book, Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. This book is meant to address one of our culture's silent soul killers, feeling terrible about how we look. But remember, God has something to say about this as well. That's Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching, available at tanbooks.com or Amazon. And be sure to join me each Monday at 2 p.m. for Faith in Sport.
Why do we need local Carolina Catholic Radio? Because we connect your parish and the community with the EWTN network. As a local affiliate, we are totally dependent on your donations, your partnerships, and your sponsorships to pay our bills and stay on the air. If you believe in local Carolina Catholic Radio, the future is now. Please make a tax-deductible donation today at carolinacatholicradio.org.
And we are back here on Faith and Sport live on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270. Also, CarolinaCatholicRadio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. I'm Chris, your producer and co-host here on Faith and Sport. And your host for Faith and Sport today is Dr. John Acquaviva, live in the studio.
Thank you,
Listen
Chris.
to your loyal fans out there.
Everybody sit down, please.
Yeah,
Folks, thank you for
calm
joining
down,
us.
everybody.
This is Faith and Sport. We apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sports. So if you are a coach, you are an athlete, you're a parent of an athlete, you're a referee or administrator, this show is for you. And if you know people that fit that category and they want to apply their faith and they want to apply sport and their faith together, be sure to pass this along to them. And remember, there's a lot of different ways to listen to the show. There's a lot of different replays of the show throughout the week. So please share that with folks. I think they're going to really appreciate you sharing that with them. Coming up here in a minute, we're going to be joined by Bear Woznick. He's an EWTN radio and TV personality. And one of the things I want you guys to consider, especially I think a lot of our listeners, not all of them, of course, but our men serving the diocese in one regard or the other, mainly as parishioners. But I sincerely invite you to attend this year's men's conference. It's going to be held at St. Matt's on March 7th, and I think it'll be a great way to reconnect with your faith and reconnect with some guys in the diocese that have similar interests that you do, and certainly the one thing that you guys are all going to have in common is your faith. So I enjoy you, and I implore you to consider that on March 7th. All right, let's get to our guest. This guy's great. Him and I have been on each other's show a couple times. I always look forward to talking to him. I just think he's one of the real guys in the world of faith and sport. His name is Bear Woznick, EWTN radio and TV personality and professional surfer. Bear Woznick, welcome to our show.
Hey, aloha, John. Good to talk to you, bro.
This is great, man. So listen, let's start on talking about surfing. So you're a professional and world champion surfer. What's that mean to us non-surfers?
Well, first of all, taking it way too seriously, because surfers really, we just go out and play, but sometimes we compete. But, my world titles are in tandem surfing, which is a real extreme sport. I lift my wife, Cindy, over my head. She's an extreme athlete and really acrobatic overhead lifts, sometimes with one arm. And it's the most beautiful experience you can have, dropping on, like, say, a 10-foot face maybe, and doing that bottom turn and then lifting her up into a lift, and it's just beautiful. And everyone tells her how great she did. No one tells me, because no one's looking at me. They're looking at how beautiful her lifts are. So it's pretty cool. I've got to tandem surf all over the world, compete with all kinds of great people, but really I do it just because I love surfing and I love the surfing tribe.
Very good. In fact, one of the things I did was I put in Google, as you were mentioning that, I put in Google search Bear Woznick tandem surfing, and if you were to do that, you would see some pretty pictures. There's good-looking bear, there's some good-looking women that you're surfing with, and of course the sights are outstanding. Some great blue water, and you'll get opportunity to see. And some of the close-ups of Bear are just terrific because there's not just a look of happiness on his face; it's a look of pure joy. So,
amen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can hear the waves in the background right now. I'm standing about 100 yards from the waves right now.
Oh, that is awesome. Where are you right now, Bear?
Well, I'm in Florida right now, by Cocoa Beach, and we're flying home on Wednesday to Waikiki.
Wow.
So we kind of live in both. We do a lot of our ministry work on the mainland, so we have a home here in Cocoa Beach. But and this is where I met my wife.
Awesome.
But our real home is on the beach in Waikiki.
Of course. Bear, tell us, let's switch gears now. I know one of the things you do, you on your radio show, on your TV show, you like to challenge men in a lot of different ways. Tell me about that you want to challenge men to stand their ground. Explain that.
Hey, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of NASCAR?
Of course.
Kind of like in the Carolinas, right?
Oh, it's big here.
I was digging what was happening yesterday at NASCAR when they were down in the pit interviewing all the drivers.
Uh-huh.
And I saw them holding their children. Like they were standing next to them or holding them in their arms. And it was like it's the biggest, gnarliest day of their work year, and they're putting their children first. And I was reminding this, Malachi, the very last verse of the Old Testament is that God said he will turn the hearts of the fathers towards children and the children towards their fathers. And I'm thinking of Luke 1:17, where it said when it was announced that John the Baptist would be born, a really gnarly guy, that he would be a voice like Elijah, turning the hearts of the fathers to their children. That's what I mean by standing your ground. We need to stand our ground against the onslaught of the cultural invasion in our society, but it starts in the living room, and it starts by spending time with your children, teaching them how to play baseball, teaching them how to fish, teaching them how to surf, spending active time with your children. That's standing your ground. That's what a real man of God does. He turns his heart towards his children and prays that God would turn his children's heart towards him.
Bear, my grandfather, or my mom's father, one of the things that, he'd never mentioned this to me, but one of the things he said to my mom much later in his life, maybe a year before he died, was, and this was a family man. I thought he was deserving of all the accolades that he got and all the support and that he got in his public life and his professional life and so forth. And he was beloved as a father and a grandfather from me, for instance. But he did say that he wishes he spent less time hunting and fishing and more time with his family. And I think
take the kids hunting and fishing.
That's right. You could have taken them.
Take them with you.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the great adventure. People say, I always like to have an adventurous life, and I'm torn between my family and adventure. I'm like, dude, the biggest adventure you can have is to bring an eternal being into existence and then be part of making sure that they're with you for eternity in heaven. I mean, what greater adventure could there be than being a father? I mean, we're named Father because God is a father. He's eternally a father, and we get to be kind of like him. What greater adventure is there than abandoning yourself, like we say, to the wild adventure of God's will? My son Jeremiah dropped into 85-foot surf on the North Shore of Oahu in 2007. When he dropped into that wave, he was abandoned to that wave. He had to ride it 1.5 miles to kick out.
Wow.
That's how extreme serving God is. You get to experience so much of the power and the presence of God, better than any big wave surfer has ever experienced, is serving the Lord and seeing God move, and especially in the context of your family, because God will answer the prayers of a father.
Absolutely. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. This is Carolina Catholic Radio. Our guest today is Bear Woznick. One of the things I encourage you folks to do before the break, so you could see a picture of Bear Woznick and some of the ways in which he serves the church, is check out deepadventureministries.com. That's all one word, deepadventureministries.com. And you can see, again, pictures of our guest, Bear Woznick, and all the ways in which he serves the church. You like to use the word Deep Adventures, Bear. In fact, that's part of your website name. Why did you do that? What's the meaning behind the Deep Adventure part of Deep Adventure Ministries?
Well, we have a saying in surfing: "Go deep or go home." It's like the most radical thing you can do as a surfer. The coolest thing you can do is drop into a wave and have the tube throw over you, so that you're totally hidden. You're riding in the most powerful part of the wave, and you're in the most beautiful part of the wave, the most dangerous part of the wave, and you're hidden. And that's what we want to be as Christians. We want to live our lives so that people, when they see us, they don't see us, they see the wave, they see God. It's like when you look at a big wave.
Yep.
Like they tend to be a 1/2 mile to a mile out.
Yep.
You really can't even see the surfer, but you can see the thread of that board, the wake of the board, the white water of the board as he's carving down that wave. The surfer, by surfing that wave, you realize, that's a much bigger wave than I thought. I can tell because I can see that surfer riding it. When we live our lives, people should be looking at us and going, "Wow, I didn't know God could do stuff like that." And when you ride a big wave as a surfer, when you come in, no one has ever told me, "Man, you were really good riding that wave." They always say, "Man, that was a great wave." Give glory to the wave. So the adventure is, abandon yourself to the Lord, serve the Lord, and then God won't see you disappearing inside that tube, but people will see the wave because of what you've done, who you are. They're going to see God.
Bear, let me ask you. Okay, you mentioned the tube, you mentioned the big wave. When was the last time you were in the middle of one of those guys?
In the barrel of a wave?
Yep.
Oh my God! It just happened recently. I don't try to remember when that.
Like in the last couple months.
Yeah, in the last couple months, it was actually here in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Oh, come on!
It is kind of one of those things where it just kind of almost happens to you. It's much easier on a reef break. Like in Hawaii, the waves tend to come out of 2-mile deep water and suddenly hit a 2-foot or 3-foot deep reef. So it makes that wave throw, so you can just drop in and just park yourself in it. But no, there was just a really cool day, and I was surfing. Next thing I knew, I just stalled the board, let the waves come over the top of me. It didn't last long, but I surf every day. In Florida, I have a problem because sometimes the conditions are not good, but normally I try to surf every day, and I primarily, unless I'm tandem surfing with Cindy, if the waves are maybe 18 or bigger, 18 feet or bigger, I primarily stand up paddle surfing into the waves. A lot of people think that's a new sport, but they've been doing it in Hawaii for 1,500 years. So you stand up paddle, and you see the waves coming, maybe 6 or 7 miles out, 6 or 7 minutes away, really, and you can paddle to where the wave is and turn, and you have that kind of free fall feeling, dropping into the wave instead of just proning into it. You're standing up and dropping in. I just kind of dropped in, and it was there.
Man, I love your energy,
cool.
brother. That's why I'm always going to have you on this show on a regular basis, man. Your energy is palpable, and it's just something that we want to have on this show. We're talking to Bear Woznick here on Faith and Sport. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio.
Yeah, I think next time you have him on the show, you ought to go on location.
I know.
Yeah, dude.
I think Bear would love that. That'd be fantastic.
I would too.
Oh, yeah, we would all like that. Now, Bear, on your website, you have the drop-down menus in the middle of the page, and one of the tabs says Bear Woznick Adventure Radio. Through your radio program, what's the main thing you want to accomplish in your message to your listeners?
Well, we find all kinds of different. We usually interview men, but we will interview women too. But I find all kinds of like boots on the ground type Christians could really, more like. And then I get people like Dr. Peter Craven on. But we're basically talking about what it means to be manly. I don't use the word masculine anymore because that's been co-opted.
That's right.
We really challenge man. I remember Lord, when I was first starting my ministry, the Lord whispered. I had this kind of sense, this vision of a black pickup truck spinning its wheels in gravel because there was not one of those big boxes in the back of the bed that with all the tools in it to give it traction.
Yep.
And the Lord was saying, I want you to talk to that guy in the black pickup truck. And then 3 days later, I drove over from Tampa. I was in Florida at the time, over to Cocoa Beach. I was telling a friend of mine about this the night before, and then we were down at the beach coming out of surfing, and a black pickup truck pulls through, and I see it's got one of those big boxes in the back, and I go, Dennis, that's just like I was telling you. And he's searching through, looking for waves as he's turning around the gravel parking lot. No rock starts hitting because he's just got that weight to give him traction. And then a wild bobcat stuck its head out the back. He had like a bobcat for a pet. And I go, that's what I want. I want that kind of a guy. But the traction, that toolbox is the 7 virtues, the 7 sacraments. It's knowing your faith. It's the catechism. That we could, as Catholics, we can get down to earth and get practical. And in Hawaii, the tradition is that you hold your breath during the sunset. It takes about 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Sure.
You hold your breath during the sunset. And I just tell people that's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. You should be spending at least praying 20 minutes a day, twice a day at the very minimum.
Yeah.
Men need to spend time in prayer, get their spiritual muscles going, as Matthew Leonard told me the other day, getting your virtue muscles working.
Yep. You'll appreciate this, Bear. A friend of mine who's a Catholic priest in the Diocese of Richmond, Virginia, said I think he said it was the most impactful moment in his spiritual life was the day when he was a child. He was probably like 8 or 9 years old. And he walked by his dad's bedroom, and his dad was on his knees saying the rosary. And he said that was the single most impactful thing in his life. And my guess is Bear Woznick can relate to that and is proud of that father.
Yeah, lead by example, right? That's what we've always been told.
I thought that was a great story. And look what happened to that guy, man. He is a dedicated, wonderful priest in the Diocese of Richmond. Folks, we're talking to Bear Woznick. Thank you for joining us today on Faith and Sport. Bear, before you go, tell us about your book, anything about a TV show that you want to share with the people. That way they can get to know you more and what your message is all about.
I'll tell you what, the TV show, we ride motorcycles across the United States, and we just let the Holy Spirit lead us into all kinds of encounters with people and kind of in going deeper with brotherhood. And then my latest book, Deep Adventure, The Way of Heroic Virtue, really, I got a lot of men that watch my morning sunrise. I have the Ocean Sunrise Catechism every morning on my Deep Adventure Facebook page. It's the Bear Woznick Deep Adventure Facebook page.
Awesome.
And a lot of fathers are now watching it with their sons. We have all kinds of women, all ages, all over the world. but they've been buying my Deep in the Wave of Surfing Guide to the Soul and reading it with their sons. The chapters are, like 4 or 5 pages each. So that's pretty cool. But one of the exciting things we do is we have something called Bear's Man Cave. If you look on the website, it says, "Danger, don't push this button." That's a secret Facebook group. You can't join it by going on Facebook. You got to go to deepadventure.com, and then you become part of this secret Facebook group where we challenge each other, we equip each other, we share our hopes, and we share our challenges. We ask for prayer. And then every now and then, about every 2 to 3 weeks, we have a live video chat meetup where people all over the world get together and we just talk story. And we're going through my book, Deep Adventure, The Way of Heroic Virtue. This is my second book. Kind of working our way through it. We've taken us a year and a half to get about halfway through it because the dialogue gets so intense. But the Bear's Man Cave is one of the coolest things that, someone can participate in. And then we train those men then to start their own man caves, their own kind of groups. That Man Is You and programs like that are great, but a lot of men aren't ready for that yet. They just need to be able to go sit on the back deck with a buddy, a few men, have a cigar, a shot of whiskey, and talk about Jesus. I mean, you can't get better than that.
I think you just drew a lot of people in from that thing. We probably should have started this whole conversation with that. We would have drawn a lot more people into our conversation. Well, listen, Bear Woznick, thank you very much for joining us. You're always great when you're on the show. I love your energy, as I mentioned. And I'm going to ask our listening audience to pray for you and your continued service to the church. And you have a good day, brother.
Okay, my brother. Aloha.
Take care. Well, that was Bear Woznick, folks. He mentioned a couple things. One, you can check out what he does at Deep Adventure Facebook, or you could just check out his webpage, which gives you a lot of information. Is this guy a guy's guy or what? I mean, how many people have uttered the words, "Get a cigar, get a shot of whiskey, and let's talk about Jesus"? Yeah. I think that's great. I mean that. We should have started the whole conversation with that, because anybody that was thinking about changing the channel, they would have said, "Who is this guy? I love this guy."
Yeah, I know, and I'm serious about it. Next time we have him on the show, we need to go live on location, because I see you out there on a surfboard riding the waves doing faith and sport.
Chris, you should see some of the pictures. If you go to Bear Woznick surfing, all these great photos of him. In some cases, I think this one picture had him holding up a gal with one arm as he's surfing. But the way he sees it, he goes, "John, you overstated all that." But actually, he is a champion surfer. But he kind of downplays that, because his big message is not him. It's about the Lord and bringing guys in particular to the Lord. So I really appreciate that.
I'm surprised he wasn't out in California riding those really big waves out there.
In fact, he spends time, as he mentioned, between Florida and Hawaii. So I just happened to catch him in Hawaii. So listen, we got a few minutes left, Chris. Let's do this. I want to thank everybody for joining us on Faith and Sport here today, Carolina Catholic Radio. Make sure you share this show with other people, especially other people who are directly involved in sport. I think they'll have some interest in this. Let's do this. We're on the tail end of this show, but Chris, you got a couple questions for me.
That's right.
Question number one at
It's time for Q&A with Dr. A, and the first question, we're 2 weeks into the new XFL season. Want to have your thoughts on that, Dr. A, about their uniforms. Are they ugly? Do you like their uniforms? Or do you like the rule changes?
Yeah, what do I like about it?
Yeah.
I like that there's football on. I'm not a huge football fan. I'm a pretty big football fan. My son Luke, though, God bless him, he's 8. Just a year ago, he could care less about anything but Legos and mud. Right? Those are his two favorite things. And now I'll shift it to a football.
Well, the mud part has to do with football.
That's right. And I'll shift it to the XFL. He doesn't know who it is. He doesn't care who it is. He's like, "Daddy, football." And if it's a way for me and him to bond, I'll sit there and watch those nasty uniforms. But no, have you seen it, Chris? Any of the past, 2 weekends?
No, I've not really gotten to watch it.
Okay, so just flip to it next Saturday or Sunday, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Because the thing that they don't want to do for sure is they don't want to mimic anything in the NFL as far as the uniforms go. They don't want to mimic anything in college football.
Right.
But to a strong degree, those things have been refined. Those things have been studied. Those things have been sampled. And it took decades for them to get to those colors, the contrast and so forth. And the XFL is doing it like on the run. And none of the uniforms are attractive, right? Like the helmets. And of course, the main thing is, like the names themselves, the nicknames, the colors, they don't like flow in your eye and in your brain and so forth. We just say the Oakland Raiders and we think the silver and black. We say the Indianapolis Colts and we think of blue and white. We say the Dallas Cowboys, we think of the star. You say the Washington, D.C., Renegades? I forgot their name. Anyway, we don't know really who they are, right? And also the fans in the last 2 weekends, the first 2 weekends, I should say, it's not bad, right? The crowd is actually pretty decent. As Carlos mentioned, I can't remember, did he say this on air or off air? But he said it only went in Washington. They had 2 consecutive home games, and he said it went from like 17,000 down to 15,000. Not a huge drop, but it's a noticeable one, right? And, of course, the XFL is fearful of that because you could have people wanting to tune in, but if there's nobody at the game, they're not going to watch it, right? And I think...
Yeah, like, why do I need to watch this? I mean, there's hardly any fans out there at the game.
That's right. And so part of it is when you watch a game, the crowd kind of brings you into the excitement. Even if it's not your team, like if you're an NC State fan, right, and you're at Duke, partly what pulls you in, even though you're not for who all those people in Duke are voting for, which is the Duke Blue Devils, right? It draws you into the game because it's so exciting, and they've built up that history. They built up that, they built up that great product in Duke basketball.
Right.
And these guys are in the beginning stages. Anyway, having said all this, I don't see much of a chance. I really don't. I don't see much of a chance for XFL. I am not anti-football. I'm certainly not anti-XFL.
Right.
I just don't think... I think that we are overly saturated with football, and I think when it comes time, I think this will ultimately be its last year. They may go through this whole season. I think it's a 10-game season. They may actually go through the entire 10-game season. They might still be on TV. I'm just not sure they're going to go out with a bang.
Yeah, I was surprised at them wanting to try that again after what happened the first time.
Oh, I know. But 2001 was the first time for them. But the biggest thing why they came back, and it was a big thing that they came back, was just last year they had the AAF. I think it was the American Alliance of Football. They didn't even, I think it was like an 8-game schedule. And somebody's going to have to correct me on this, but I don't think they got halfway through the season and then they canceled all the rest of the games. And for that to happen, and for the XFL to go, we're trudging straight ahead, like full steam ahead, I was like, whoa, like people's money's involved here.
Yeah.
But I think it's a better product overall. I think they've made some better decisions, but we'll see. Let's do this. What's question number 2?
Number 2, President Trump said recently that it's time to put Pete Rose in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Do you agree with that?
Tell the truth, I'm not sure where I stand on this, but the reason that this has come up is for one main reason. It goes back to what we were talking about, the Astros cheating scandal, and Pete Rose tried to take advantage of it, and he said, listen, these guys really directly cheated the game, and you're letting them stay in the game? These guys are going to eventually be on the docket to be in the Hall of Fame, and you're not letting me in? He says, come on, let's rethink this. But I think Rob Manfred and people in Major League Baseball are not going to do it. And President Trump was just on board, and he goes, Pete, you're right, but I don't think it's going to change. I think that guy's going to die, not be in the Hall of Fame. And as we talked about a couple weeks ago, once you die, the rules are you cannot get elected if you're banned from the game.
Right.
All right, let's end with this, folks. Our commentary of the week, and it has to do with the Houston Astros cheating scandal. As I promised at the beginning of the show, the owner and numerous players from the Houston Astros have offered apologies for their participation or lack of effort to stop the sign stealing issue during the 2017 season in which they won the World Series. There have been lots of talk that the apologies were not heartfelt by the players, the owner, and so forth, or that they were only sorry because they got caught. But let's go back to the last time we were in the confessional. It's quite possible we didn't genuinely feel contrite until we reflected on our sins and verbalized it during that sacrament. Let's give these gentlemen the benefit of the doubt and then take them for their word. And this goes for me, too. All right, folks, I want to thank Carlos Herrera. I want to thank Bear Woznick for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on the Carolina Catholic Radio for Faith and Sport.
That's right. We want to thank you for joining us for Faith and Sport today on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. You've been listening to Faith and Sport on AM 1270 Charlotte, also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. Tune in next Monday afternoon for more Faith and Sport live from 2 to 3 on Carolina Catholic Radio. And make sure you tune in throughout the week for an encore presentation for Faith and Sports. Have a blessed week, everybody.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.